The peace bargain began with a chain around Nerys Vale's throat. Not iron. Ice silver. The kind reserved for wolves considered too weak to guard and too dangerous to leave unmarked. It burned cold against her skin, as Alpha King Dacian Morcant's guards dragged her across the frozen bridge between Southmere and Frostmere. Snow fell in hard white sheets, swallowing the banners on both sides until the world looked stripped of color, law, and mercy. Nerys did not fight the chain. That would have made them call her feral. She did not beg. That would have made them smile. She walked because her feet still belonged to her, even if nothing else did. At the far end of the bridge stood the Winter Warlord. Kael Varen did not wear a crown. He did not need one. His black fur cloak moved in the wind like a living shadow, and frost clung to the edges of his dark armor, as if winter itself had sworn to him. His hair was black, his eyes pale gray, and the scars across one side of his throat looked like claw marks left by something that had tried to silence him and failed. Behind him waited the northern soldiers of Frostmere, wolf helms lowered, spears planted in snow. Behind Nerys stood the court that had abandoned her. Dacian Morcant sat on a white warhorse beneath the banners of Southmere. Golden-haired, beautiful in the cruel way kings became beautiful when nobody could refuse to look at them. He had once been her alpha, not by kindness, not by protection, by ownership. In Southmere, even the lowest Omega belonged to the pack ledger. Nerys' name had always been written in the back, beneath debt workers, kitchen-born, and wolf weak. Today, the ledger had sold her. For border peace, Dacian announced, his voice carrying over the ice. Southmere offers 1 Omega servant in settlement of blood debt. Nerys heard the words without surprise. The court had practiced them in front of her. 1 Omega servant. Not Nerys. Not daughter of anyone. Not pack. A body weighed against war. The chain jerked, forcing her to her knees before the Winter Warlord. Snow soaked through her thin gray dress. Her hands were bare, fingers cracked from years of washing blood out of hunting cloth and frost out of noble boots. No cloak had been given to her. That was part of the message. Southmere sent her as someone already half dead. Kael looked down at her. His expression did not soften. Good. Pity was just another hand deciding where to place pain. Dacian leaned forward in his saddle. Accept her, Warlord. And the pass remains closed for another winter. Kael's gaze shifted past Nerys. To the gate. The ice gate rose behind him. Enormous and ancient. Carved into the mountain itself. 2 frozen doors taller than fortress towers met beneath an arch of black ice. No army had crossed through it in 100 years. Old stories said it once opened to a forgotten third crown. But standing before it now, Nerys felt something colder than royalty in its silence. The gate did not feel like a kingdom waiting to be claimed. It felt like a court waiting to hear evidence. The wolves carved into its surface did not kneel to any alpha. They faced forward. Witnessing, Kael stepped closer. Snow crushed beneath his boots. Why this Omega? Dacian's smile did not move. She has no family to contest the bargain. That is not an answer. She has no wolf strong enough to mourn her. The words struck with familiar precision. Nerys kept her face still. Her wolf had never answered pack calls. Never joined moon hunts. Never pushed through her skin in rage or fear. Most called it dead. Some called it absent. Dacian's court called it convenient. Kael crouched in front of her. Not kindly, like a man inspecting a trap before stepping near it. What is your name? Nerys looked at him. The question startled her more than the sale. No one had asked that since she was small. The guard yanked her chain. Answer the Warlord. Her throat tightened around the cold collar. Nerys Vale. Something behind Kael's eyes changed. Not recognition. Calculation. Dacian saw it too. His gloved hand tightened on the reins. Not with surprise. With the irritation of a man whose trap had sprung too early. Kael stood. Vale is a border name. Dacian's voice sharpened. Vale is a servant name now. The ice gate groaned. Not loudly. Not enough for the soldiers to step back. But Nerys felt it through her knees. A deep shudder beneath the frozen bridge. The chain around her throat cooled until pain flashed down her spine. For one breath, The carved wolves on the gate looked less like stone and more like bodies beneath ice. Kale's hand moved toward the chain. Dacian spoke quickly. Careful. The collar binds her under Southmere bargain law. If you remove it before acceptance, the peace debt reopens. There it was, a gift with teeth. Kale's hand stopped inches from the ice silver. Nerys almost laughed. Even sold, she remained a trap. Kale looked at her again. Did you agree to this bargain? Dacian's court went still behind her. Nerys heard the shape beneath the question. Kale was not asking because her consent mattered to his heart. He was asking because consent mattered to the old border law. He wanted to know whether Dacian had brought him a peace offering or a weapon dressed as one. That hurt more than if he had said nothing. She looked at him through the snow. You asked whether I agreed because you cared about the law, not because you cared about me. Kale did not answer. Good. Silence was the first honest thing he had given her. Nerys turned her face toward the ice gate. No, she said. The word fell into the snow. The frozen gate answered. A hairline crack opened between the enormous doors. Dacian's horse reared. Kale did not move. Nerys stared at the gate, breath catching in her chest. Behind the crack, darkness waited, not empty darkness, but moonlit fur, pale eyes, and the slow exhale of something alive beneath centuries of winter. Dacian recovered first. A trick of old ice. Kale's voice was low. Old ice does not answer consent. The chain around Nerys' throat tightened suddenly, dragging her forward. One of Dacian's guards had pulled it, face pale beneath his helm. The bargain requires blood proof. No, Kale said. Too late. The guard shoved Nerys against the ice gate. Her palm struck the frozen surface. The ice split her skin open. Blood spread across the carved wolf beneath her hand. Red against blue-white frost. The world stopped. Then the gate began to open. Not like a door, like a judgment. The first white wolf stepped through the narrow crack. Its body looked made of snow, bone, and moonlight, with eyes like old stars and frost smoking from its teeth. Behind it, more wolves gathered in the dark. Dozens, then hundreds. Silent and pale, the first wolf lowered its head. Not to Dacian, not to Kale, not even to Nerys as a queen. It bent one foreleg into the snow as if taking an oath before a court. Then every wolf behind the ice gate did the same. The wolves did not kneel to crown her. They knelt to testify. And their star-pale eyes did not stop at Southmere. They turned toward Frostmere, too. Dacian's face emptied. Kale's hand closed into a fist at his side. Nerys could not breathe. The blood on the gate burned cold, forming a sigil around her palm. Not Southmere gold. Not Frostmere black. A third mark. Not crown. Not bloodline. Consent. The white wolf lifted its head and spoke without moving its mouth. A bargain made with a stolen body is not peace. The ice gate opened another inch. It is evidence. The ice gate did not accuse Southmere alone. It turned its wolves toward Frostmere, too. The star-pale eyes shifted across the bridge, hundreds of them bright behind the crack in the ancient ice. Frostmere soldiers tightened their hands around spear shafts. Southmere guards backed toward their king's horse. No wolf lunged. No teeth flashed. The white wolves did not come like an army ready to tear throats open. They came like witnesses entering a court. That was worse. Nerys stood with her bleeding palm still pressed to the frozen gate, the ice-silver chain burning cold around her throat. Blood spread under her hand in thin red lines, then froze into writing. The words did not carve themselves into the gate. They wrote across the snow. No peace made with stolen blood shall stand. The letters burned blue-white against the bridge. Dacian's face hardened. Old border theater. The first white wolf turned its head toward him. Dacian's horse stopped breathing loud enough for Nerys to hear. Kale Varen looked at the law in the snow, then at Nerys. His face was still, but the scars across his throat had gone pale. He had known the gate might answer consent. He had known Dacian had brought a trap, but he had not known the gate would turn on Frostmere too. Good. Let him stand under the same winter that had been placed around her neck. Dacian dismounted slowly. Snow broke beneath his boots. Southmere rejects the accusation. The Omega is disputed border property under debt settlement law. She was listed, witnessed, and transferred. Nerys felt the words hit her like old stones. Property. Listed. Transferred. The chain around her throat tightened. Not from the guard's hand this time, but from the law Dacian had spoken. The collar liked the word property. It had been made to like it. It had been trained by law longer than Nerys had been alive. Kale stepped forward. A living body cannot be border property. Dacian smiled. Then refuse her. The wind dropped. Nerys looked at Kale. So did every white wolf. Dacian spread one gloved hand toward the gate. Refuse the bargain, warlord. And Frostmere rejects peace. Accept her. And Frostmere accepts disputed blood. Either way, the pass opens under violation. Southmere will have claim to march. There it was. Not panic. Not accident. Dacian had not sold her because she was useless. He had sold her because he wanted the gate to answer. And he wanted Kale's kingdom blamed for whatever answer came. Her life was not the price of peace. It was the signature he needed on a war. Nerys' stomach turned cold. She had not been a peace offering. She had been a match carried to an old war. Kale's jaw tightened. Frost gathered along the edge of his cloak. For one heartbeat, Nerys saw the warlord beneath the man, the one who could turn command into weather. The one soldiers followed because hesitation froze before reaching him. Then he looked at the chain around her throat. Not with pity. With calculation again. Nerys hated that she noticed the difference. You want me to either claim her or refuse her, Kale said. Dacian's smile widened. I want the law honored. No, Nerys said. Both kings looked at her. The chain tried to choke the word after it left her mouth. But the ice gate held the cold away from her throat. Nerys turned to Kyle first. Do not use my refusal as your war banner. His eyes sharpened. Then she turned to Dacian. And do not use my body as your road. The white wolves lowered their heads, not in worship, but in recognition of testimony. Dacian's expression thinned. An Omega does not speak treaty law, the ice gate answered. The snow beneath Nerys' knees split open into a circle of blue-white light. Inside it, images formed not clear memories, but legal ghosts. A girl with red hair standing in chains between two older kings. A boy with one silver eye forced to touch the same gate with blood on his palm. A pregnant woman wrapped in Frostmere wool and Southmere debt ribbons. Faces blurred by time. Collars bright around every throat. Nerys stopped breathing. The bargain had happened before. Not once. Again and again. Southmere and Frostmere had both fed the gate living bodies and called the silence peace. Kale's face changed. Dacian saw that and struck quickly. Old debts, old kings. Irrelevant. The white wolf closest to Nerys opened its mouth. No sound came out, but the snow rode again. Debt remembered. Is not dead. Kale looked at the images in the light. Frostmere used collars, too. Dacian laughed once. Every kingdom has survived by paying someone else's price. Nerys looked at Kale. Did you know? No. The answer came too fast. Honest, maybe. Still not enough. She held his gaze until he understood. His voice lowered. I knew the gate judged border bargains. I did not know Frostmere had fed it people. The difference matters to you, Nerys said. It did not matter to them. She nodded toward the ghosts in the snow. Kale did not answer. Good. The gate did not need his apology. Neither did she. Dacian stepped toward Nerys, and the Southmere guards moved with him. Enough. The Omega remains under Southmere collar until accepted or refused. She cannot testify while bound under our law. The collar flared. Pain cut into Nerys' throat. Her knees buckled, and her bleeding hand slipped against the ice. The gate began to close by an inch. The white wolves stiffened, unable to cross the threshold fully. Dacian smiled. Kyle moved. Nerys lifted her free hand sharply. Stop. The gesture was not graceful. It shook from cold and pain. But Kale stopped. Nerys pressed her fingers against the ice-silver collar. It burned her skin. She could feel the names inside it, not written on the outside, but layered under the metal, one over another. Like screams frozen too tightly to echo. The first white wolf stepped closer. It did not bite the collar. It touched its nose to the ice silver. The collar did not break. It began to speak. Not with Nerys's voice. With a girl's voice, older than her and younger than grief. Leora Fen sold for river peace. Another voice followed. Mara Voss traded for 7 winter roads. Then another. Enwyn Thorn, given to Zeal the wolf famine. The bridge went still. Nerys's breath shook as the collar tightened and spoke faster. Voice after voice. Girl after girl. Boy after boy. Each name trapped in the ice silver before her. Kael's face went white with fury. Dacian's smile vanished. The collar around Nerys's throat began to speak again. This time, with the voices of every girl Southmere had sold for peace. Nerys had thought the collar was choking her. Now she understood it had been choking on the dead. The ice silver around her throat trembled with voices layered so tightly they scraped against one another. The first names had come like wounds reopening. Leora Fen, Mara Voss, Anwyn Thorn. Now the collar dragged in a breath it did not have. And the next voice came colder. King Harrow Morcant, signer of the river peace. The snow beneath Dacian's horse blackened. Another voice followed. Warlord Edric Varen, receiver of Mara Voss under Winter Road settlement. Frostmere soldiers shifted. Kael did not. But something in his face closed. Not against truth. Against the instinct to defend his own dead. Nerys saw the battle in him, and hated that she had to notice. Men always wanted praise for not lying when the lie had already been caught by something stronger than them. The collar continued. King Orlin Morcant, witness to the famine exchange. High Warden Sereth of Frostmere. Keeper of the girl after transfer. Only 4 names. Enough. Nerys lifted one shaking hand and pressed her fingers against the collar. The ice burned her. No more victims. She would not let the dead be used again. Not even by justice. The white wolf nearest her turned its star-pale eyes toward the collar. The voices stopped. For one impossible breath, the bridge held still around her. Dacian recovered with a clean, cold violence. Silence the false testimony. A Southmere guard drew his blade. Kael moved before the blade fully left its sheath. Snow exploded beneath his boots. He caught the guard's wrist and twisted. Bone cracked. The knife fell into the snow. But Kael did not kill him. Nerys saw him choose not to. That mattered. Not enough to soften her, but enough to count. Dacian's eyes sharpened. You assault Southmere guard under active bargain law. Kael's hand remained around the guard's wrist. He moved to kill a witness. She is property under my collar. The ice gate groaned. Kael's gaze cut to the ice silver chain around Nerys's throat. He wanted to break it. Every line of him said so. The scars at his throat had gone white. Frost gathered along his knuckles. Do not, Nerys forced out. His eyes met hers. If you tear it off, she said, breath scraping through cold pain. He will call it Frostmere interference. Dacian smiled faintly. Nerys hated being right. Kael released the guard and stepped back, not away from her, but away from the trap. Then I refused the bargain. The bridge seemed to tilt. Dacian's smile returned fully. Excellent. Kael's voice cut through the snow. Not the witness. The words did not save her, but for the first time, they stopped making her the price. The words struck the ice gate harder than blood. A crack of blue-white light shot from the gate to Kael's boots. It circled him once, then rose up his body like frost, deciding whether to spare a man or read him. He did not move. The first white wolf watched him. Kael lifted his bare hand and placed it on the ice-silver collar. Nerys gasped. The collar did not break. It punished him. Frost-black fire crawled from the chain into his palm, sinking beneath his skin. His jaw locked. The scars on his throat opened in thin white lines, not bleeding, but remembering some old wound of command. Dacian's voice sharpened. Touching collar evidence without claiming the bargain is unlawful. Kael looked at him through the pane. Then, let the gate record me. The snow wrote at his feet. Frostmere refuses ownership. Kael's breath roughened. Then another line appeared. Frostmere accepts trial. The ice gate opened another inch. Behind it, the white wolves spread across the darkness in silent ranks. Not crossing fully. Not attacking. Waiting for the court to form. Nerys stared at the words. Trial. Not rescue. Not coronation. Judgment. Dacian's face went hard with anger. No trial stands without a named petitioner. Nerys touched the collar again. This time she did not ask it to speak the dead. She demanded the living guilt. Name the hand that made people property. The collar tightened so violently her vision blurred. For a moment, she thought it would crush her throat before it answered. Then the ice silver flared, and a new voice emerged. Not a victim. A clerk. Southmere Amendment of Living Debt. Revised under House Morcant. Unnamed bodies may be transferred as border property if no family claim is recorded. Nerys went cold. No family claim. The phrase had followed her all her life. No mother in the ledger. No father named at the shrine. No birth witness. No wolf strong enough to be counted. Not because she had been born empty. Because someone had written her that way. Dacian stepped toward her. Enough. The white wolf barred his path. It did not snarl. It simply stood. Dacian stopped because even he knew the difference between bravery and stepping into a verdict before it was done. Nerys looked at Kale. His hand was still on the collar, burning with frost. He was paying, but he was not owning. That was the first useful thing he had done for her. Ask it, he said. Nerys' throat hurt too much to answer. She pressed her fingers harder into the ice silver. Who revised it? The collar shook. Dacian moved again. This time 3 Southmere guards lunged with hooked blades, not for Nerys' throat, but for the collar itself. Cut the witness. Leave the body. Kale drew his sword, but Nerys slammed her bleeding palm against the gate. The white wolves moved. Not to kill, to surround. They appeared between blades and bodies, silent as snowfall, forcing every soldier to stop with steel inches from moonlit fur. The bridge became a courtroom made of breath, ice, and held violence. The collar answered. Dacian Morcant, heir to the amendment, current holder of the living debt ledger. Dacian's face emptied. Nerys stared at him. You did not find a law, she whispered. You inherited a knife. His mouth tightened. I inherited a kingdom surrounded by wolves, and made more collars. I made peace. The ice gate thundered. Every white wolf turned toward him. The snow wrote one sentence between the two armies. Peace without consent is only war delayed. The collar burned hotter around Nerys' throat. No, not hotter. Alive. Something beneath it stirred. For years, Nerys had thought her wolf was dead. Too weak to answer. Too ashamed to come. But now she felt it under the ice silver. Not clawing for battle. Not howling for blood. Listening. A court wolf. A witness wolf. Her wolf did not bare its teeth. It opened its eyes, and every lie on the bridge lost its shadow. The collar had not been holding back her strength. It had been holding back testimony. Nerys' breath broke. Kale saw her face. What is it? She could not explain. The collar did it for her. It whispered the last name in a voice that sounded like Nerys' own dead wolf. Vale was never a servant name. The ice gate opened wide enough for the first row of witness wolves to step onto the bridge. It was the first witness line. Nerys' wolf did not wake with a howl. It woke by making every oath on the bridge tremble. The sound was not heard. It was felt. Frostmere spear oaths cracked first, thin blue lines running down the shafts in soldiers' hands. Then Southmere debt bands tightened around wrists beneath gloves. The old words men had sworn to kings, borders, ledgers, and winter roads shivered as if something beneath them had opened one eye and begun asking whether they had ever been true. Nerys staggered against the ice gate. The collar around her throat bit deeper. Ice silver teeth sank into skin, not enough to spill blood freely, but enough to remind her that every truth had a body, and tonight the body was hers. The witness voices had stopped, but the collar had not finished taking payment. Cold slid under her jaw, down her neck, into her chest. If it tightened much more, she would not need Dacian's blade. The trial would kill her before it crowned anyone guilty. No, not crowned. She pressed one hand to the collar, fighting for breath. Vale was not a crown name. It was a witness line. The first white wolf stepped fully onto the bridge. Snow passed through its pale legs like mist, but when its paw touched the ice, the entire crossing shook. It looked at Nerys, and beneath the collar, her own wolf looked back. not a beast rising to fight. A quiet presence sitting inside her ribs with winter in its eyes. Her wolf did not bare its teeth. It listened. The ice gate wrote across the snow in slow, burning letters. Named accusation required. Dacian read it and smiled through his anger. There is no named accusation. There is only an unstable omega bleeding on forbidden ice. Nerys tried to speak. The collar closed. New air came. Kael moved toward her. But the witness wolves turned their eyes on him. Their judgment held him in place more firmly than spears. Dacian saw the opening. "Kill the witness line," he said. 3 Southmere guards lunged. Not for the collar this time. For her heart. Kael's sword came free in one clean arc. But he stopped short before crossing the circle of wolves. He understood too late what the gate demanded. If he defended her as Frostmere's possession, Dacian would turn protection into claim. If he did nothing, she would die in front of the court that had called her evidence. Nerys's vision blurred. The collar ate another breath. Kael dropped his sword into the snow. The sound cut through the bridge. "I place Frostmere under trial," he said. The witness wolves turned toward him. Kael stepped into the circle without a weapon. Frost climbed his boots, then his legs, then the scars at his throat. Not only Southmere. Frostmere. My house. My pass. My dead kings. Every bargain signed by my banner. Dacian's guards froze inches from Nerys. The ice gate answered with a crack so deep it sounded like a mountain opening its bones. Frostmere accepts accusation. The words burned beside the earlier law. Kael's body locked as the frost reached his chest. Pain crossed his face, but he stayed upright. Dacian's smile vanished. "You would put your own throne beneath a ghost court for an omega?" Kael looked at Nerys. Not softly. "Honestly, for a witness I almost accept it as a bargain." The words did not save her. Not yet. But the collar loosened by a breath. Enough for air to scrape into her lungs. Nerys did not thank him. She used the breath. "Read the first bargain," she whispered. The collar shook violently. Dacian stepped back. That frightened her more than his blade. The first white wolf lowered its head toward Nerys's throat, not touching. Waiting for her choice. Nerys pressed her bleeding palm harder to the ice gate. "The first," she said. The bridge vanished beneath frostlight. A memory opened inside the ice. Not Southmere. Not Frostmere. Older than both banners as they now stood. A circle of black winter stones surrounded the first ice gate when it was still clear enough to see through. 2 kings faced each other across a chained woman in gray furs. One wore the early gold of Southmere. One wore the black winter iron of Frostmere. Between them knelt the woman. Her hair was dark. Her face was pale. Her throat bore the first ice-silver collar, rougher than Nerys's, crueler because it had been made without practice. Blood marked her hands, but she held her spine straight. She looked exactly like Nerys. Not similar. Exactly. Nerys stopped breathing. Dacian spoke quickly. Too quickly. "Ancestral resemblance proves nothing." The memory woman lifted her head. Both ancient kings placed their hands on the collar. The Southmere king said, "For peace." The Frostmere king said, "For passage." The woman looked from one to the other. "Did either of you ask whether I agreed?" Neither answered. The ice gate behind her darkened. Then the woman smiled. Not gently. With the terrible calm of someone who had just understood that history would need a witness more than a queen. "My name is Nerys Vale," she said. "And I refuse to be the road between your wars." The ancient kings tightened the collar. Nerys fell forward, but her blood touched the gate. The first witness wolf appeared behind her. Not to rescue her, to record her. Nerys felt the truth move through the collar. The living debt law had not begun because one kingdom sold a helpless girl to another. It began because both kingdoms betrayed the first woman who said no. Kael's breath broke. Dacian's face hardened into something almost like fear. The memory shifted. Nerys Vale looked through the ice, straight at Nerys. The collar around Nerys's throat went suddenly cold enough to burn away pain. Alira's voice came from inside the gate, clear as breaking winter. "Do not crown me," she said. The witness wolves bowed their heads. Alira lifted her chained hands toward the 2 ancient kings. "Put them on trial." The ancient kings' shadows were dragged out of the ice by their collars. They came forward on their knees, not as ghosts with crowns, but as records the ice gate had kept too long in silence. One shadow wore Southmere gold, cracked and dim. The other wore Frostmere black iron rhymed with frost. Both still had their hands locked around the first collar at Alpha Vale's throat. Nerys felt the pressure through her own. The ice silver tightened until her vision sparked white. Alira's memory did not fade behind the gate. It remained there, chained and upright, her face identical to Nerys's, her eyes colder than grief. The snow rode around the bridge in a circle. First Bargain entered. The witness wolves spread wider, not attacking either army, not even growling. They stood between soldiers, horses, banners, and kings, until no one could move without stepping through testimony. Dacian's face had gone hard with calculation again. Fear had only lived there for a breath. Then he buried it under law. An ancient crime does not void modern authority, he said. The dead cannot unmake current peace. The collar around Nerys's throat answered by speaking in Alira's voice. Peace built on my body never stopped being war. The words struck the bridge like a blade through ice. Kale looked at Nerys, but not for comfort. Not for permission. For the next step. That made something in her chest tighten. She hated that he was learning quickly. Because each correct choice made it harder to hate him cleanly. The gate wrote again. Named accusation required. Nerys swallowed against the collar. Her throat burned where the ice silver had bitten in. A trial needed an accusation, not rage. If she named everything, the collar might crush her before the gate finished listening. If she named too little, Dacian would crawl through the narrow space left behind. Dacian knew it. He stepped closer to the circle of wolves. The witness line must state a charge. If she cannot, Southmere requests dismissal. Kale's eyes flashed. You would demand speech from the throat you collared? I demand procedure, Dacian said. Nerys almost laughed. Procedure had always been the clean glove worn over dirty hands. She lifted one shaking hand and touched the collar. Her witness wolf stirred beneath it, not clawing, not snarling. Listening through her pulse. What was first? Not the sail, not the chain, the lie that made both possible. Nerys looked at the shadows of the ancient kings. I accuse Southmere and Frostmere of naming a living refusal as transferable debt. The ice gate thundered. The accusation wrote itself in the snow beneath her blood. Living refusal named as debt. The first witness wolf opened its mouth. This time, sound came. Not a howl. A low court tone, deep enough to make every oath band, spear mark, and royal seal on the bridge tremble. The ancient memory shifted. Nerys Vale kneeling at the first gate. The Southmere king holding a parchment. The Frostmere king holding a blade of black ice. Both men arguing not over whether she had consented, but over which kingdom had the right to use her refusal. She belongs to the border, said Southmere. She belongs to the passage, said Frostmere. Alira lifted her head. I belong to myself. The parchment burned. The kings looked at one another. And then, together, they rewrote the sentence. Body without house may settle war. Nerys' stomach turned. There it was. Not a bargain born from chaos. A law born from two men agreeing that a person who stood outside their houses could be used by both. Kael's face went white. Frostmere signed it. Dacian cut in smoothly. Ancient Frostmere signed it. Ancient Southmere signed it. If guilt is shared, no modern king stands alone beneath it. Nerys looked at him. There was the trap. If both kingdoms were equally guilty, Dacian would dissolve his own present crime into old history. Shared guilt became fog. Fog became escape. Her wolf opened its eyes wider inside her. Every lie on the bridge lost its shadow. Dacian's shadow did not fall behind him. It bent toward the living debt ledger strapped beneath his saddle. Nerys saw it. So did the witness wolves. Dacian's jaw tightened. Kale followed her gaze. The ledger. Dacian's hand moved to his sword. The white wolves did not move, but the snow beneath his boots cracked. Nerys pointed at the saddle with 2 fingers. Read the living page. The collar burned into her skin. Dacian's ledger snapped open by itself, pages thrashing in the wind. Names flashed across the parchment. Not the dead. The living. debt workers, kitchen-born, borderless children, packless omegas, those with no recorded family claim. At the bottom of the current page, written in fresh black ink, was her name. Nerys Vale transferred under peace debt. Body acceptable as border settlement. Below it, another line waited. Blank. The place where Frostmere's acceptance should have been written. Kale's hand flexed. Dacian saw it and smiled. If he refuses, the page records rejection. If he accepts, it records claim. Either way, the ledger completes. Nerys stared at the blank line. Her life waiting for another man's handwriting. Cold anger moved through her. Quiet and exact. She looked at Kale. Do not write on me. His face changed. I won't. Not refusal, not claim, nothing. He lowered his head once. Then I write against the ledger. Dacian laughed. Frostmere has no standing inside a Southmere debt book. Kale stepped forward. The frost around his boots darkened. Then Frostmere will become evidence. He drew the black oath knife from his belt and cut across his palm. Blood fell onto the snow, not onto the ledger. I, Kale Varen, Winter Warlord of Frostmere, name every Frostmere pass opened by living debt subject to review. The witness wolves turned toward him. Frost climbed his arm to the elbow, burning black under the skin. His soldiers shifted in alarm, but he did not step back. The ice gate wrote beneath his blood. Frostmere oath entered against itself. Nerys's collar loosened by another breath. Dacian's ledger shuddered. The blank line beneath her name cracked. Not filled. Cracked. Dacian's expression sharpened into fury. You think pain makes you righteous? Kale's voice was rough. No. It makes me recorded. Nerys looked at him, and for one dangerous heartbeat, the cold around her did not feel empty. Then the ledger turned its pages faster. A final sheet rose, older than the others, sealed in blue-black wax. Dacian went still. Nerys felt the collar pulse. The witness wolf inside her lowered its head. The wax broke. On the page was the first version of the living debt law, written over Alpha Vale's blood mark. At the bottom were two signatures. The ancient Southmere king, the ancient Frostmere king. And beneath them, in smaller script, a third witness line scratched in against the king's will. Vale consent denied, trial unfinished. The ice gate opened another span. Alpha Vale's chained memory lifted her head from inside the frost. The first trial was interrupted, she said. The witness wolves faced Nerys. Name who interrupted it. The blue-black wax on the oldest page began bleeding upward. Not red. Ice-white. It crawled over the signatures of the two ancient kings and froze them beneath a thin sheet of frost, as if the ice gate had decided their names were not the end of the crime. The third line, Vale consent denied, burned brighter, scratching itself deeper into the parchment until the living debt ledger shook in Dacian's saddle like a trapped animal. Nerys kept one hand against the gate. The collar around her throat loosened just enough for breath, but not enough for mercy. Every pulse reminded her that the trial was feeding through her body. Too much truth, too fast, and the ice silver would not need Dacian's blade to kill her. The witness wolf inside her did not pace. It listened. The first white wolf stepped beside the ledger and lowered its nose toward the bleeding wax. Frost gathered in the shape of a third handprint, smaller than a king's, narrow-fingered, pressed over Alpha Vale's unfinished testimony. Kale saw it first. A witness sealed the trial? No, Nerys whispered. The words scraped her throat. The collar answered for her with a thin crackle of ice. A witness was used to seal it. Dacian dismounted fully now, his boots striking the bridge with careful force. Enough. This is ancestral theater twisted by an unstable bloodline. The present matter is simple. Southmere offered property. Frostmere refused. The bargain collapses. The pass is contested. The ledger snapped open to Nerys's page again. Dacian smiled coldly. And since Frostmere interfered with transfer, Southmere claims violation. The snow beneath him did not write. It waited. Nerys saw the trick. Dacian was trying to drag the trial back to the present before the past named the hand that made the law possible. If he could turn the gate into a border dispute, he could bury Alira again beneath armies, weather, and blood. She pressed her palm harder to the ice. No, The witness wolf opened its eyes inside her. Across the bridge, every shadow attached to a lie shrank. Dacian's shadow bent again, not toward his sword, not toward his horse, but toward the collar around Nerys' throat. There, the collar itself knew. Nerys lifted both hands to the ice-silver band. Pain struck so sharply her vision blurred. Kael moved one step, then stopped before she could order him. Good. He was learning that help could become theft if offered too quickly. Nerys dragged her fingers along the collar's inner edge and felt the old names beneath the metal. Leora, Mayra, Anwin, Illyra, others, too many to count. But under them all was something different. Not a victim's name, not a king's name, a maker's mark. She could feel it like a thorn under ice. Show the hand that forged the first collar, she said. Dacian moved. This time he did not send guards. He drew his own blade. Kael's frost surged instantly, but the white wolves stepped between them both. Not to protect Dacian. Not to protect Nerys. To keep the trial from becoming a duel before the evidence could speak. Dacian stopped with the blade half raised. The ice gate rode across the snow. No king may cut a question before it is answered. The collar burned. A memory tore open inside the gate. Nerys Vale knelt in the first trial circle, blood on her mouth, her hands chained. The two ancient kings stood over her, shaken by her refusal. Behind them, the ice gate had already begun to open, and the first witness wolf watched from the crack. Then a woman stepped forward from the Frostmere side. Not a queen, not a soldier. A law priestess in pale winter robes, her face hidden by a veil of woven snow. Around her neck hung an ice-silver chain, unclosed and waiting. The trial cannot continue, she said. The witness is unanchored. Illyra looked at her. I am alive. Alive is not anchored, the priestess replied. A body without recognized house may be turned by any court that hears it. The Southmere king seized the words at once. Then anchor her. The Frostmere king hesitated. Only for a breath. Then he nodded. The priestess placed the first collar around Illyra's throat. Illyra's witness wolf lunged from the gate not to kill, but to stand beside her. The collar snapped shut before it reached her. The wolf struck invisible ice and shattered into pale sparks. Nerys gasped. Inside her ribs, her own wolf went utterly still. The memory priestess lifted a silver needle and carved the maker's mark into the collar. 3 interlocked lines. A gate. A throat. A closed eye. Kael's face changed. That is not Southmere. Nerys looked at him. He did not look away. It is Frostmere temple law, he said. Dacian's mouth curved. How unfortunate. The words were soft, poisonous, perfectly aimed. Kael's soldiers shifted behind him. The witness wolves turned their eyes toward Frostmere again. Nerys felt the collar tighten in triumph. As if it had waited generations to make every guilty kingdom useful to itself. Dacian stepped back into calm. Then the first interruption was Frostmere's. Southmere cannot stand as sole accused. Kael's jaw hardened. No one named sole accused. But the witness bleeds under my collar now, Dacian said. And Frostmere forged the first one. The trap closed around the bridge. Shared guilt again. Fog again. Nerys almost bent under the weight of it. Then her wolf did something small inside her. It did not howl. It opened its eyes wider. Every lie lost its shadow. The memory priestess's shadow did not fall toward Frostmere. It fell toward a hidden figure behind both kings. Nerys started. There had been someone else in the memory. Someone standing just beyond the first gate's light, face obscured by wolf fur, one hand resting on the priestess's shoulder. Not the priestess, Nerys whispered. The gate brightened. Kael's eyes sharpened. Who commanded her? The memory shifted. The hidden figure leaned forward. A ring glinted on his hand, not Southmere gold, not Frostmere iron. Ice-white bone. The same color as the witness wolf's teeth. Nerys Vale saw him and went pale. You, she said. The figure touched the priestess's shoulder, and the first collar closed fully around Illyra's throat. The gate roared. Nerys' collar began to crack, not open, but inward, cutting deeper. Kael reached for it again and stopped with a sound like pain trapped behind his teeth. Nerys forced her breath through the narrowing band. Name him. The memory resisted. Dacian's eyes flicked toward the ancient figure, and for the first time since the gate opened, Nerys saw true fear in him. Not fear of guilt, fear of recognition. The ice gate wrote one word across the snow. Protector. Then the word froze, shattered, and rewrote itself. Owner. The hidden figure lifted his face. Illyra's voice shook through the gate. The man who interrupted the first trial was not a king. The witness wolves lowered their heads. He was the first keeper of the collars. The ice-silver collar sank its teeth beneath Nerys' skin before the hidden figure could step fully from the gate. Pain flashed white through her throat. Not a cut. A claim. The band was trying to anchor itself deeper, as if naming its first keeper had made it remember the hand that taught it how to own. Nerys staggered, one palm sliding down the frozen gate, leaving a red smear across the old sigil of consent. The witness wolf inside her opened its eyes wider. But even that small awakening cost breath. Chaol took one step. The white wolves turned on him. He stopped so hard the snow broke under his boots. Nerys saw the violence in him fighting the law. He could reach her. He could tear the collar from her throat. He could maybe save her body for a moment and kill the testimony with his hands. Dacian saw it too. Touch it, the Southmere king said softly. Break the witness. Save the girl. Lose the trial. Chaol's jaw flexed. Nerys forced her hand up. No. The gesture shook. The gate obeyed the meaning anyway. The memory inside the ice sharpened. The hidden figure stood behind both ancient kings and the veiled Frostmere priestess. He wore no crown, no kingdom colors, no battle cloak, only a white wolf fur mantle and a ring carved from ice-white bone. His face was older than the king's and younger than the law. Smooth with the terrible patience of someone who had learned to survive every side of a war. The first keeper of the collars placed 2 fingers under Nerys Vale's chin. She tried to pull away. The first collar held her still. You are too useful to die, he said. Nerys spat blood onto the ice. I refused both kings. Yes. His smile was almost gentle. That is why both kings need someone else to interpret you. Nerys felt the words like a blade dragged along her spine. There. The first theft had not been only the collar. It had been interpretation. The keeper turned to the ancient kings. You may continue your peace if the witness line is placed under neutral custody. The Southmere king frowned. Whose custody? The keeper lifted the bone ring. Mine. The first witness wolf beyond the gate snarled without sound. The memory darkened. Chaol looked at the ring. Keeper's bone. Dacian's eyes cut toward him. Nerys noticed. So did the gate. Snow wrote beneath Chaol's boots. Name the oath. Chaol's face went still. Dacian smiled. But it was too tight to be triumph. Yes, warlord, name it. Chaol did not look at him. His gaze stayed on the bone ring inside the memory. Frostmere temple oaths still carry keeper. Bone in their seals. The Frostmere soldiers behind him stirred in alarm. Chaol continued, voice rougher. Not openly. Not by that name. But in the oldest oath plates. Temple custody. Border witness custody. Disputed. Body custody. Nerys understood through the pain. Frostmere had not only forged the first collar, it had preserved the keeper's language inside holy law, disguised as protection. Dacian stepped toward the circle. And Southmere merely inherited a structure Frostmere sanctified. The gate went still. Nerys' wolf looked at Dacian. His shadow vanished again. Not entirely. Only around the ledger under his saddle. Li. Nerys drew a ragged breath and pressed her fingers to the collar. No. Dacian's eyes narrowed. She forced the next words through ice and blood. Name what Southmere added. The collar punished her. It drove cold so deep into her throat that for a heartbeat she heard nothing. Not the gate, not the wolves, not the wind. Chaol's face blurred. The bridge tilted beneath her. Then the witness wolf inside her opened its mouth. Not to howl. Tobita. Every lie on the bridge lost its shadow completely. Dacian's ledger flew open. Pages ripped themselves free and whirled around him like black birds. One page froze in the air above Nerys. Southmere revision. Neutral custody may be converted to property if witness line fails to produce recognized house claim. Nerys' breath caught. Kael looked at Dacian with lethal quiet. You did not inherit the knife. Dacian said nothing. Kael's voice dropped. Your house sharpened it. The gate answered with a deep crack. Dacian's expression hardened. Morcant kept Southmere alive. The white wolves did not move. Nerys hated that Dacian sounded almost sincere. Maybe he believed survival excused turning nameless bodies into roads. Maybe every king did, until a caller learned to speak. The memory shifted again. Generations passed in flashes. Keepers in white wolf fur taking children from border shrines. Frostmere priests stamping custody seals. Southmere clerks rewriting custody into property. Kings on both sides pretending the other had begun the cruelty first. Collars passed from hand to hand until no one remembered they had once been made to silence a witness, not preserve peace. Nerys' knees hit the snow. Kael moved again. Again, the wolves stopped him. This time he turned on them with a snarl that made his own soldiers flinch. The first witness wolf looked at Nerys. Nerys knew what it asked. Continue? Her throat could not shape the answer. So she placed her bleeding palm against the snow and drew one line. Yes. Then another. Limit. The wolf lowered its head. The collar loosened one breath. Not mercy. Procedure. The gate rode across the snow. One question before blood rest. Dacian's eyes sharpened at the boundary. Kael saw it too. One question meant one path. Ask wrong, and Dacian would bury himself in shared guilt again. Nerys closed her eyes. What mattered most? Not who began. Not who inherited. Who still held the collars now. She opened her eyes and looked at Dacian. Where are the others? Dacian went motionless. The bridge seemed to stop breathing. Kael's face changed. Others? Nerys pointed to her collar, then to the ledger, then to the ice gate. Not past. Present. The witness wolf inside her stared through Dacian's shadowless lie. The ledger pages turned violently until one sealed section cracked open. The title burned in blue-black ink. Unclaimed border stock held for future peace debt. The words carved silence into every soldier on the bridge. Dacian's mouth tightened. Kael's voice turned cold enough to hurt. How many? Dacian looked at Nerys, and there was hatred in him now. Not because she was powerful, because she had made him visible. The ledger answered instead. 47 living collars active. Behind the ice gate, the witness wolves lifted their heads. Nerys' collar whispered with 47 muffled breaths. Then, from deep inside the gate, Nerys Vale spoke again. The trial cannot end with one witness freed. The ice beneath Nerys' knees opened into a black stair leading downward. It begins where the living collars are kept. The black stair breathed upward from beneath the bridge. Cold came with it. Not winter cold. Not the clean bite of snow or the hard wind rolling down from Frostmere's mountains. This was cellar cold. Buried cold. The kind that had never touched sky. It carried the smell of old iron, frozen wool, and breath held too long inside stone. Nerys looked down into it and heard 47 collars breathing in the dark. Not voices yet. Breaths. Small ones. Broken ones. Some steady from those. Still strong enough to wait. Some so faint, they sounded like candles dying under ice. The collar around her own throat tightened in answer, as if warning her that one witness could not carry 47 living mouths and survive. Dacian spoke first. That stair is Southmere property. The ice gate thundered. The word property cracked across the bridge like thin glass under a boot. Kael did not look at Dacian. His eyes were fixed on the stair. Fury moved through him, but not the reckless kind. It had sharpened since the gate began. It no longer looked for something to kill first. It looked for the correct place to stand. Nerys, he said, voice low. You do not have to descend. She almost laughed. Her throat hurt too much. The witness wolf inside her opened its eyes. It did not urge her downward. It did not howl for bravery. It simply listened to the breaths below and waited for her to decide what kind of witness she was willing to become. Nerys pressed one hand to the collar. The ice silver had bitten through skin now. She could feel warm blood beneath the cold, slow and dangerous. If she kept asking questions, The collar might close before the 47 could speak. If she refused, Dacian would bury the stair, bury the ledger, bury every breath waiting below. She stepped toward the stair. Kyle moved with her. The witness wolves turned their heads. He stopped. Nerys looked back. There it was again, the old shape of power, trying to walk beside pain and call itself protection. Kyle understood before she had to lift her hand. His jaw tightened. If I go first, Frostmere leads the trial. Nerys nodded once. If I carry you, he calls you claimed. She nodded again. Dacian's smile returned faintly. At least the warlord learns. Kael's eyes cut to him. No. I learn because she makes law clearer than kings do. The words landed quietly. They did not soften Nerys, but they did not use her either. Kael stepped back from the stair and took the frost-black burn from his palm, the mark he had earned, touching her collar, and pressed it into the snow beside the opening. I will not lead, he said. I will hold the bridge under trial while the witness descends. The ice gate rode at his feet. Frostmere stands guard, not claim. Frost climbed his legs again, locking him in place from boot to knee. Kael inhaled sharply but did not fight it. The gate had accepted his role and punished it into shape. Nerys turned away before gratitude could become another chain. She descended. Each step was carved from black ice, veined with pale blue light. The witness wolves did not follow in full bodies. Their reflections moved along the walls beside her, star-pale eyes appearing inside the frozen stone. Behind her, above, she could hear armies shifting, Dacian breathing too evenly, Kael holding still under frost. Below, the 47 breaths grew louder. The stair ended in a chamber beneath the bridge. Nerys stopped. Rows of ice-silver collars hung from the ceiling on thin chains, each one closed around empty air. But beneath them, shadows knelt on the floor. Children, women, old men, boys not yet grown, bodies not physically there, and yet not absent. Each shadow was tethered upward to a collar. Each collar bore a ledger tag. Unclaimed, borderless, debt-ready, peace stock. Nerys' stomach turned. Dacian had not kept all 47 bodies beneath the bridge. He had kept their legal breath, their right to say no. The bodies could still be in kitchens, border camps, debt houses, servant halls, living, working, walking under the illusion of time, but their consent had been stored here in advance, ready to be spent when a war needed softening. The first shadow lifted its head. A girl younger than Nerys. Her mouth opened, but no voice came. The collar above her shook instead. Nerys stepped closer, then stopped before touching it. She had learned. Touching without asking could become another form of taking. She pressed her bleeding palm to her own chest. Do you want to be heard? The girl shadow nodded. The collar above her spoke. Isolde Wren, held for Spring River dispute. Nerys closed her eyes for one breath. One name. Not all. Limit. She pointed to the next shadow only after the first collar dimmed. A boy's voice answered. Tavin Holt, held for Northern Road Tax. Then a woman. Mira Eshin, held for marriage. Debt settlement. The chamber trembled. Above, Dacian shouted something muffled through stone. The collars rattled. Nerys felt the trap too late. Naming them one by one was correct. It was also exactly slow enough for Dacian to destroy the bodies before the legal breath could return. Her witness wolf opened its eyes wider. Every lie in the chamber lost its shadow. One collar at the far end did not cast darkness. Nerys turned toward it. It was larger than the others. Older, marked not with a person's name but with a seal. Morcant gold over Frostmere black iron, welded together around a closed eye. The keeper seal. Inside it, 47 thin blue threads were knotted together. Not the names. The location of their bodies. Nerys reached for it, then stopped. The collar around her throat squeezed in warning. If she touched the keeper's seal, it might pull all 47 breaths through her at once. She would die before finishing the first word. A voice came from the stair behind her. Not Gael. Dacian. Very good, he said softly. Nerys turned. He stood halfway down the black steps, one hand on the icy wall, smiling as if the chamber belonged to him because cruelty had always opened doors for men who named it necessary. Above him, Kale's frost-bound voice shouted, but the stair sealed with black ice between them. Dacian lifted a small gold key. "The warlord guards the bridge," he said. "But Southmere owns the cellar." Nerys backed toward the keeper seal. Dacian's eyes dropped to her collar. "You have done enough, Nerys. The gate needed a witness. I needed a witness to find what the old ledger hid." Her breath stopped. He had let her descend. Not because he failed to stop her. Because he needed the living collars revealed before he could move them. Dacian raised the gold key toward the keeper's seal. The 47 collars began to close around their shadows. Nerys slammed her bleeding palm against the old seal before fear could stop her. The chamber went white. Her witness wolf opened its mouth inside her chest. And for the first time, it asked a question aloud. Who gave Southmere the key? The gold key in Dacian's hand froze before it touched the keeper's seal. Not at the teeth, at the handle. Frost climbed over the Morcant crest stamped into the metal and stripped it bare, revealing older markings beneath. A closed eye, a divided road, and a wolf's mouth sewn shut with ice thread. The cellar walls brightened around Nerys, until every hanging collar cast a pale ring across the floor. Dacian's smile vanished. Nerys kept her bleeding palm pressed to the keeper's seal. Pain ran from her hand into her shoulder, then into the collar around her throat. The 47 shadows behind her trembled as their collars tightened and loosened at once. Caught between Dacian's key and her question, her witness wolf had spoken only once. The whole cellar was still answering. The old seal split open across its center, not wide enough to release the threads, but enough to let the first memory breathe. A stone chamber appeared inside the ice wall. Not Southmere, not Frostmere. A place older than both courts, built beneath the first ice gate. Nerys Vale stood there in chains, weaker than before, the first collar biting her throat. Around her, witness wolves waited behind the frost, unable to cross because the collar had anchored her testimony under keeper custody. The first keeper stood before her with his bone ring. Beside him knelt a child, a boy with pale hair and Southmere eyes. Nerys' stomach dropped before the memory spoke. The keeper placed the first gold key into the boy's hand. "Kings die," he said. "Wars change names. But someone must always know where the witnesses are kept." The boy looked at Nerys. "Why me?" "Because your house wants peace badly enough to call ownership mercy." Dacian's face went rigid. Nerys stared at him through the white cellar light. Morcant had the key from the beginning. Dacian recovered too quickly. Morcant kept what both kingdoms required. The keeper seal burned under Nerys' palm. Lee. Every collar in the cellar clicked once. Dacian's shadow disappeared completely. The witness wolf inside Nerys did not growl. It simply opened its eyes wider. And the lie had nowhere left to stand. The memory shifted. Generation after generation of Morcant heirs entered the cellar. Some came in armor. Some came in mourning. Some looked disgusted. Some looked proud. Everyone carried the gold key. Everyone touched the keeper seal. Everyone added names to the living collars when peace became expensive. Then the ice wall showed a boy Dacian no older than 12, standing before the same seal with his father behind him. His father guided his hand to the gold key. "Never let the witness line die," the older Morcant said. "Without a veil, the gate cannot confirm transfer. Without confirmation, war becomes honest." Young Dacian looked toward a small girl sleeping on a cellar cot beneath a gray blanket. Nerys. Her breath left her. She remembered nothing of this place. But the collar remembered for her. Her own small body had been brought here before she could speak. The ice-silver chain had hung above her cot, open and waiting. Her little hand twitched in sleep as if reaching for a wolf no one had allowed to wake. Dacian's father looked down at her. "This one?" Young Dacian's mouth tightened. "She is weak. She is Vale. She has no wolf. That is better. A sleeping witness survives longer." Nerys felt the words enter her like cold water. Not abandoned by accident. Kept. Not overlooked because she was nothing. Preserved because someday someone would need a witness body to spend. Dacian's voice sliced through the memory. "You were fed. Sheltered. Listed." Nerys looked at him. "Listed." A word only men like him could mistake for mercy. The collar around her throat tightened, reacting to anger, or grief, or the truth finally finding enough space to hurt. The keeper seal pulsed beneath her hand. The 47 threads inside it strained toward the collars above the shadows. Dacian lifted the gold key again, forcing his composure back into place. Now you understand. If I control the key, I control where the 47 bodies are. If I control the bodies, I control whether the gate hears them before war begins. War you started, Nerys whispered. War I delayed until I could win. The cellar shook. Above the sealed stair, Kale struck the black ice once. The sound cracked through the ceiling but did not break it. He was still bound to guard the bridge, not lead the trial. If he forced his way down, Dacian would claim Frostmere seizure. If he stayed, Nerys stood alone in the cellar with the man who had kept her life like a blade in storage. Dacian knew it. He stepped closer. You wanted consent. Choose then. Give me the seal, and I leave the 47 breathing. Refuse, and every collar closes. They will die in their bodies before the gate learns where to find them. The first shadow behind Nerys began to fade. Isolde Wren. The name struck her from part of the cellar memory. The girl's collar tightened around empty air, and somewhere beyond the bridge, a real girl would be gasping. Nerys lifted her other hand, shaking. No, Dacian smiled. No is expensive, little witness. Her witness wolf turned within her, not toward Dacian, toward the 47 shadows. It asked without words what Nerys had asked before. Do you want to be heard? One by one, the shadows lifted their heads. Isolde first, then Tavin, then Mira, then dozens more. Their mouths opened. No sound came, but their shadows nodded. Nerys understood. Consent was not only refusal, it was also permission. She pressed her bleeding palm harder into the keeper seal and dragged the 47 threads toward herself, not into her throat, not into her blood, not into ownership, but into the circle of the ice gate's hearing. The pain was immediate. The collar bit so deep she tasted snow and iron. Her knees hit the cellar floor. Frost spread from the seal up her arm, writing names into her skin in pale lines. Not all at once. Not enough to kill if she kept the order. One breath, one name, one location. Dacian lunged. The gold key flashed toward her wrist. Before it reached her, the witness wolf inside Nerys opened its mouth again. Did they agree to your mercy? The question struck Dacian like a blade. The gold key stopped in midair. The cellar answered for him. No. The word did not come from Nerys. It came from 47 collars. The keeper's seal shattered. Threads of blue-white light shot upward through the sealed stair, through the bridge, through the snowstorm. Racing toward the living bodies Dacian had hidden across both kingdoms. Dacian stared at the broken seal, then at Nerys. For the first time he looked truly afraid. Not because he had lost the key, because the key had lost him. The gold in his hand melted into ice silver and wrapped around his wrist. A new collar. Small. Incomplete. Waiting. The ice gate spoke from above and below at once. Trial expands to the living. Nerys tried to rise. Her body refused. The 47 names burned across her arm, and the collar around her throat cracked open one thin line, not enough to free her. Only enough to let the next truth out. Kale's voice broke through the stair above, rough and desperate. Nerys! Dacian lifted his newly collared wrist and smiled with the last piece of cruelty he had left. If the trial expands, he said, then every living witness becomes target before sunrise. The cellar walls turned transparent. Across Southmere and Frostmere, 47 hidden bodies woke screaming as blue-white light found their collars, and every one of them whispered the same word. Run. The 47 living witnesses woke with the same command in their mouths. Run. The word flashed through the transparent cellar walls, through snow roads and servant barracks, through debt houses, river shrines, border kitchens, and hidden rooms where children had been told their collars were only winter charms. Blue-white light burned around 47 throats. Small hands clawed at ice silver. Older hands grabbed cloaks. One woman stumbled from a marriage bed with a collar glowing beneath her hair. A boy in Frostmere road chains looked toward the mountains as if hearing his own name for the first time. Dacian smiled through the collar forming around his wrist. There, he said softly. You freed their locations. Nerys knelt before the broken keeper's seal, 47 names burning along her arm, Her own collar cracked only by a thin line. Her body felt hollowed by cold. The witness wolf inside her stayed awake, but even it was breathing hard now, as if testimony had weight and it had carried too much too fast. Dacian lifted his newly collared wrist. The incomplete ice-silver band trembled. Not yet closed. Not yet judged. Every loyal blade in Southmere will see the light. Every frightened house in Frostmere will hide the evidence before your gate can hear it. Consent is slow, Nerys. Fear runs faster. Above them, the black ice sealing the stair split. Kale came through without his sword. Frost covered him from the knees to the throat. Punishment for leaving the bridge he had sworn to guard. Every step cost him. Blood showed black beneath the white burn at his scars. The witness wolves moved in the ice behind him, not stopping him now, but recording the cost. Dacian laughed. Frostmere abandons its post. Kale did not look at him. He looked at Nerys. Did you ask me to stay? He said. Nerys' breath caught. Even now, he asked. Not beautifully. Not gently. Roughly. Through pain. Because he was still learning how not to make rescue another form of command. She shook her head once. Kale turned to the ice gate above and lowered himself to one knee. Not to Nerys, not to Dacian, but to the trial. Record this violation against me. I left the bridge because the witness did not command me to remain, and because the living witnesses are in immediate danger. The cellar walls flashed. Frostmere violation entered. Kale's frostburn climbed higher. He did not flinch. Then the gate rode again. Cause accepted. Dacian's smile faltered. Nerys understood. Kale had not erased his violation. He had allowed it to be recorded with cause. That was different from innocence. Cleaner. Harder. The first white wolf stepped through the cellar wall. Then another. Then dozens. Not to hunt. Not to kill. They spread outward through the transparent roads like pale verdicts, each one following a thread of blue-white light toward a living collar. Dacian lunged for the broken keeper seal. Nerys moved first. Not fast. Not strong. Correct. She placed her bleeding hand over the shattered center and whispered, "No body moves without the body's answer." The witness wolf opened its eyes fully. Across both kingdoms, the 47 running witnesses stopped hearing only fear. They heard the question beneath it. Do you want the gate to find you? The first answer came from Isolde Wren, hiding under a bridge with snow in her hair. Yes. A white wolf appeared beside her, lowering its head not to claim her, but to stand witness while her collar loosened one link. Tavenholt answered from a road camp. Yes. Mira Eschen from behind a locked marriage door. Yes. Others followed. Not all. Some were too afraid. Some whispered no. Some could not answer yet. Nerys felt each refusal honored. The gate did not drag them. The witness wolves only stayed near those who chose to be heard. That was the difference Dacian had never understood. Consent did not mean everyone had to be brave at the same speed. Dacian saw the trial slipping beyond his reach. He drove the gold key's melted edge into his own wrist, trying to cut the new collar off before it could close. I am King of Southmere. The ice silver snapped tighter. The collar liked titles when they were used as shields. The seller asked him one question. Did they agree to your peace? Dacian's jaw locked. Silence. The witness wolf inside Nerys turned its head. Every lie on him lost its shadow. The answer appeared in the air behind him, written by 47 awakened callers and generations of dead ones. No. Dacian's incomplete wrist collar closed. Not around his throat. Around the hand that had held the key. He screamed as ice silver burned into his palm. Not taking his life. Only taking his right to sign another living debt. The living debt ledger above the bridge burst open. Pages flew through the storm, each one turning blue-white before dissolving into snow. Southmere soldiers stared as the names vanished from property columns and rewrote themselves in the gate's court record. Person. Witness. Unclaimed by debt. Frostmere's old oath plates cracked next, miles away in temple vaults and border shrines. Kael bowed his head as each crack struck his body like a blow. His kingdom's guilt did not vanish because Dacian fell. The gate made sure of that. Nerys swayed. Kael reached for her, then stopped inches away. May I? The question was nearly lost beneath the collapsing cellar. Nerys looked at him. She should have said no. Part of her wanted to, because no had become the first sacred thing she owned. But her knees were failing, and asking mattered. Yes, she whispered. To stand. Nothing more. Kael's hand came beneath her elbow, steady and careful. He did not pull her behind him. He helped her face the gate. The cellar dissolved. They stood again on the frozen bridge beneath the enormous ice gate. Armies on both sides surrounded by witness wolves and falling snow. Dacian knelt near the broken ledger, his signing hand bound in ice silver, his face pale with fury and defeat. The collar around Nerys' throat cracked again. A final voice rose from it. Nerys Vale. The first trial is answered. The ice gate opened wide. Not to reveal a throne. Not to reveal a kingdom waiting to crown her. Behind it stretched a vast white court beneath the mountain, filled with witness wolves and empty places where living voices could stand when they were ready. Nerys understood then. The forgotten third crown had not been a crown at all. It was the right no king had been able to own. The right to refuse. The collar fell from her throat into the snow. It did not shatter. It opened. That mattered. Things made to bind could be remade to release. The first witness wolf stepped to Nerys and lowered its head. Not kneeling. Not crowning. Waiting. Kael's hand remained beneath her elbow, but loose enough for her to step away. She did. The cold air touched her bare throat for the first time in years. Pain remained. Bruises remained. The memory of being sold did not leave just because the law had finally spoken. But Nerys breathed without permission. Kael looked at the armies. Southmere's living debt law is void. Frostmere submits every border oath to review. No bargain using a living body stands from this night forward. Nerys turned to him. He stopped, then corrected himself. If the witnesses agree to be heard. The gate warmed by one breath. Better. Not forgiven, but better. Nerys faced the bridge. The wolves. The broken kings. And the open court of ice. I am not your queen, she said, her voice raw and her own. I am not your peace price. I am not the road between your wars. The witness wolf inside her finally stood. Not for battle. For record. Nerys placed one hand over the open collar in the snow. I am Nerys Vale, she said. And I consent to testify. Behind the ice gate, 47 distant voices answered one by one. Some yes, some not yet. Every answer was held. And as dawn broke over the frozen bridge, the witness wolves did not bow to her. They stood beside her.